Hello Team FD and welcome back to Winners and Losers, the show where we look at the highs and the lows from the Premier League weekend just past. And this week I'm joined by a pair of winners. It's Sam Obaseki and Will Brazier. How are your weekend fine, sir? Starting with you, Sam.
It was very routine, you know, watching football, playing Spider-Man. Actually, I was playing Spider-Man this weekend on my new PS5. And yeah, I'm gloating because I was trying to get a PS5 for the time. My girl got it for me on the day that the documentary came out, so you can imagine I was buzzing. So yeah, I'm the new Spider-Man. I'm the new Miles Morales right now, isn't it?
Sounds class. Love the glasses as well. Will, what about you?
Yeah, just really enjoying Scottish football. Great to see it highlighted at the weekend. We obviously got new Kings of Scotland in Rangers. Obviously not just doing it on a domestic front, also doing it on the European front as well, which sort of not many people have done over the last year. So maybe a new dominance of a decade of dominance, I should say, Chris. Easy for me to say. Good morning.
Real cheap shot from you. Real cheap shot. I expect that sort of chat from Sam, but not from you. You know what? You're a guest and you can be swiftly uninvited for next week. Anyway, before we jump into the talking point, let's plug our guys Manscaped because they are sponsoring Winners and Losers until the end of the season. So, even though the barbers are shut, we can still maintain our dignity downstairs. All right? Although, talking of dignity, I have a severe lack of it because I tried to use my lawnmower 3.0 to trim my sideburns because I was starting to look like a Sons of Anarchy extra. And it didn't go all that well, to be perfectly honest. Will?
That's not always a bad thing. Sons, come on.
Sam? Quick question to you. Have you had any home trims yet?
Yeah, actually. It didn't really go that well, so that's why I'm wearing a hat. So we can move on. We can move on.
Yeah, I think it's best we do. Will, what about you? And that lovely flock of hair.
Yeah, well, the back was sort of turning into a mullet, so I've tried to get rid of a bit of that. Nice. But I'm just going to have to turn side on now because one of my hairs one of the sides is ruined, so I'm going to be moving a bit like Mario, a bit 2D platform game.
Great side profile, though. Anyway, awful lids aside, you can get 20% off Manscaped's stellar products with the discount code FOOTBALLDAILY. To find out more, click the link in the description below. And if you've already done it, I know I say this every week, but we really do appreciate it because it is a way of directly supporting the channel. And it's not been the easiest, has it, of late? But you guys certainly make it easier. Right, let's move on to the talking point. Rubbish chat aside, it is, should Liverpool be bracing themselves for an expensive rebuild this summer? Now, even before the Reds lost to Fulham at Anfield, making it 6 home losses on the bounce, by the by, Klopp was in the press discussing player loyalty, wasn't he? Basically, he said if a player wants to leave because Liverpool, don't secure Champions League football, he doesn't want them. But in the same breath, he also insisted that it won't be a problem with this crop of players as he knows he has their loyalty. However, you mix that statement, the fact he felt the need to make that statement, with the rumblings of discontent from the Mo Salah camp. We'll put the tweet on screen right now, not much to it. And you do start to wonder if there's some substance to one of their big players moving on. And not to mention, they've been linked with the likes of Kylian Mbappe, who's approaching the final year of his contract at the Parc des Princes. Then there's less contentious issues like age. I mean, Mane and Salah are 29 this year. Firmino is 30. So I imagine sporting director Michael Edwards has made contingency plans at the very least. And the net spend over the last 2 campaigns has only been £8 million. So there should be some money in the bank despite, finances being down because of COVID. Sam, I'm going to come to you first. One pretty clear question. If you had to sell someone in this squad to fund a rebuild, who would it be and why?
Well, I actually think that they should get rid of 2 of their front 3. And some Liverpool fans might agree and some might disagree. But Firmino, for one, I think he just has to go. He done well in previous seasons, the link-up play, Salah and Mane were banging in, so he didn't really have to score that many goals. But now that they're not banging in as consistent as they was, I think it's time for it would be perfect time for him to step up, and he hasn't stepped up. He's got 1 goal in his last 10 starts. He hasn't scored in 7 of his last UCL appearances. For a striker that can see his team is suffering, can see that he's kind of been carried by Mane and Salah, I thought that, come on. You know what I mean? As a striker, you take pride in scoring. I don't know if he takes pride in scoring. And I think if I was going into the summer and I was Klopp and I was looking at the Mbappes, the Haalands that are just, they're on the come up and they take pride in banging in goals. I'll be looking at them. But the only thing is with Firmino, I don't know how much they'll get for him. And like you said, the Salah situation with his agent tweeting a full stop. Obviously, you could get a lot
cryptic,
a lot of things from that. But I think over this season, you kind of seen him be a bit wary of.
He's looked aggravated, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Every time he's been dragged off with sort of even 10 minutes to go, he's been shaking his head furiously. Obviously, he didn't get the captaincy in the Champions League. He moaned to Diario AS about that. There's been a bit of an edge to him this season, hasn't there?
Yeah, and when he got taken off in their last, who was their last game when he got taken off at the 60th minute? Who was it against? I can't remember, but he got taken off at the 60th minute. And then he was just fuming. Like that's when the agent put out the full stop. And I think if it's both of them feeling that way, I think it would just be best for Klopp to get rid of him. Just because even though he's the one that scored, he's got 20 goals and assists this season. He's still looking like he can bang goals. It's just the energy that you want in and around the squad. I've always said that there's going to be a point where he's going to have to get rid of either Mane or Salah. And I think even though Mane has only scored 7 league goals and he's only got 3 assists, he still gives that extra energy. With Salah, you can see him kind of look lethargic sometimes. You've seen him getting taken off, and he doesn't really. It's not like the Salah of old where he just had that hunger to him. Do you get what I'm saying? So I think Salah and Firmino are the two that I'd get rid of, and then maybe combine what you get from them and go for Mbappe.
I think Liverpool fans will be a fan of the end result of that, getting Mbappe, but that is ballsy. We've started the show in bullish fashion from Sam. He's offloaded Salah and Firmino. I get Firmino, and we were crying out for Liverpool to sell him to Bayern Munich about 18 months ago when he was linked with the Bavarians for, I think it was 80, 90 million at the time. Obviously, he was playing extremely well, crucial to their success in recent times. But the numbers did indicate, he'd been playing in such a way for such a long time that it was starting to take its toll physically. And even this season, he's been much less of a creative force as well. I think 1 key pass per game, which is the lowest of his domestic career. So not scoring like Sam highlighted, not the creative force he was when he first, joined Liverpool. And he's turning 30 this year, so it might be wise to cash in on him. I think Salah may be a little bit more contentious. They would be screwed without his 20 goal involvements this term, wouldn't they? And I think he did have a point when he was hauled off against Chelsea. I thought he was playing okay.
But even when he was taken off, though, it's like, bro, he was like, I think it's one of them ones where Klopp right now, he's looking at his front three and he's looking at them to kind of save him in a sense. And even with the goal that they conceded against Fulham, you saw him just get out muscled by Lamina, and then they just banged in the goal, and it's like he turned around and he was just putting his hands up, and he's like, no bro, you should have kept that ball in the penalty box and cleared it. Like Robertson, fair enough, the header could have been better, but at the same time, you're supposed to lead by example. You're saying that you wanted the armband in the UCL games, but you're supposed to lead by example. Those things there are going to have people question how much you actually want it, how much you want to get Liverpool out of this slump that they're in.
Yeah, Oba clearly not a fan of his body language, and that's why he wants Salah gone. Looks like he's chucked in the towel, apparently. The numbers suggest otherwise, but I do get it to an extent. Like, when he said that, we'll see what happens when he was linked with Real Madrid and Barcelona. I know that that's quite a diplomatic way to kind of fend off that question, right? But you do get the sense that if a club of Real Madrid or Barcelona standing came in for him, he'd be tempted. And maybe it's best for both clubs if they parted ways to the tune of like 150 million. But 29, Real Madrid want Mbappe. Barcelona are pretty much spent, aren't they, at the moment? They'll probably be keen on renewing Messi's contract. So it's difficult. It's difficult to see who can stump up that sort of money for him. Will, obviously, we spoke about the forward line in depth there. And Liverpool did invest in the defence this January. And Virgil van Dijk is back in light training. So when we talk about transfers, do you immediately go to the front line, or are you thinking a little further back in midfield as well?
Well, I was thinking Salah just for the. I just think all the stars are sort of aligning with that as well. Just especially because I think Real Madrid bought Eden Hazard to be that sort of new Galactico, that new star, and he's not really shining very brightly for them. So I think that's clear for them. And as Salah's going to Real Madrid, he would be the main man there as well, wouldn't he? Obviously, if you go to Barca, there's a certain Argentinian that plays quite well each week. So I think that one just makes sense. And with I think the contract's till 2023. I think obviously that's where the most money would come from that. But I mean, watching the highlights yesterday, it was just absolutely awful. I don't know if it was sort of, I didn't understand the team selection. I know it was sort of freshening it up, but
it makes sense.
Then when he brought Trent and Mane on, you would have thought, I know they were losing 1-0, but just playing from the start. So I don't know if that was sort of Klopp's first call to the owners to say they haven't got that strength and depth, and then it's just a really tricky one. And the worrying thing is their run to the end of the season is so good in terms of if you just pick, well, as I'm picking from my fantasy football, but if they're losing at 1-0 at home to Fulham, I mean, if they miss out on Champions League football, well, you can forget your Mbappe. You'll be looking more at, I don't know, I was trying to maybe insert BTEC football player name here.
I mean, they have looked at some other. You raised a couple of interesting points there. One being the contracts, right? And they have actually sorted like most of their first team contracts out, pretty well. It's just Wijnaldum and Adrian that are out of contract this coming summer. Most of their big stars are nailed down to 2023, so they're in a strong sort of negotiating position with those players. And when they have them all back, this is still a squad capable of challenging for the Premier League. But what I'm saying here, I think the main point is, crux of the issue, gents, it's opportunity loss. Like, their rivals have strengthened significantly in the last, let's say, 12 months, or they intend to, right? With Manchester City, I think it's quite clear they are going to get, they are going to go in hard for, Haaland or Lukaku to replace Sergio Aguero, who's, of course, out of contract in the summer. And if they do that, Liverpool will have to maintain pace. Chelsea, of course, spent 20 million pounds last summer. Tuchel's got them, he's now maximising that talent in the squad, or looks like he will in the coming months at the very least. A bit more of a coherent system in place there. So in order to maintain pace, they need to bring in, I think, some new players, particularly with Wijnaldum being so key. My main player that I keep banging on about for Liverpool is Youri Tielemans. I think he would be a superb replacement for Wijnaldum, and just had some legs into that midfield, which when Henderson and Fabinho are back at full fitness, is a lot more mobile. Particularly with Thiago Alcantara in there, who's we did a great explain video on at the weekend. I think he's come under way too much fire in recent weeks, but he definitely just had a bit more youthful exuberance, and it weakens Leicester as a Champions League rival, but they'd have to pay a pretty penny to get him out of Leicester.
But Chris, I was going to say,
go on, mate.
It's funny because Liverpool, like you said, I feel like they've lost. They lost their opportunity, like their time to really grab the players that they could have got. Like, they should have learnt from United after Fergie left. They should have learnt from the Jose Mourinho remember when we won the league with Jose Mourinho, and then we didn't make any signings, and then we finished like 10th. Like, you're looking at these teams and you say, okay, cool, yeah, we thought that Chelsea side was good enough to fight for the title the next season, and then we literally finished 10th. And now Liverpool are going through the exact same thing. And when they go into the summer, they're not going to have the same pulling power that they would have had after they won the Premier League. The Youri Tielemans, he's going to look at Liverpool and look at Leicester and be like, Brendan believes in me. We're in the top 4 right now. Why would I leave? Do you get what I'm saying? If they get Champions League football, why would I go from Leicester to Liverpool when that's a good point. That
after missing out on it last year, like, the idea of them not being in it again for Youri Tielemans might be a factor, but then it is difficult. When a club like Liverpool comes calling for him, and he's 23, 24, you might feel like that is the next step. But I agree, the project to Leicester is more appealing right now, and that says a lot about the progress that they've made. I mean, the only other names that Liverpool have been linked with is 20-year-old Myron Baldu at AZ Alkmaar. Huge fan of his, 11 goals in 21 starts this term. I think some signings like that might be wise, and that's probably what you were kind of hinting at, Sam. Like, I think it'd be harsh of us to criticise their squad planning because it's been decimated by injuries so badly this term.
Right.
Yeah, if they signed a couple more players in that 30 million region, that they need another Shaqiri, another. They brought in Minamino and loaned him out, didn't they? But some players who are knocking on the door, Will.
Well, I think as well, it almost feels, and it shouldn't be the case, but it has been the case, that if they'd assigned one sort of stellar centre-back in the summer that could have gone in there to make, a four of Van Dijk, Gomez and Matip, like, this has been sort of the domino that's put everything down, because, Henderson's been moved about, Fabinho's been moved about, that's messed up the midfield three. If they'd have just signed a centre-back, I think, this, like you said, Chris, the squad has been there, and we've talked about it so much where Klopp's brought players up from a lower standard, and like Origi was a forgotten man, and Shaqiri, and they were all sort of performing on a much higher level, and the squad was fine, I think, but it just needed that one stellar centre-back at the back.
Yeah, like I said, there was opportunities to upgrade those squad players. That's what I was sort of getting at there by mentioning your Origis and your Shaqiris. And I think they chose to balance the books instead, and maybe they'll be proven right given the current financial landscape, right, moving forward. But they haven't strengthened significantly in the last couple of campaigns, and it'll be interesting to see what their ambitions are next season.
If they miss out on Champions League football with 10 games to go, that's like cataclysmic, because no Haaland or Mbappe will be coming across there.
Oh, it'll be interesting. Guys, what do you think in the comments? Who would you sell? Who would you buy? Would a lack of Champions League football cost them in the summer when it comes to recruiting? Let us know. I'll be hitting up your comments in the first hour. And before we end this section, it's only right to give Fulham a little bit of shine, isn't it? Because they were superb in this game. Yeah. And, the momentum is with them. And their underlying numbers are really, really good. And they're the first newly promoted side, by the by, to win at Liverpool, and I know now is a good time to go to Anfield, since Blackpool beat Roy Hodgson's Reds in October 2010, so nearly a decade. Normally dismantle teams like that. And they only kept 4 clean sheets in their first 21 Premier League games, but now they've kept 5 in their last 7, and Joachim Andersen and Adarabioyo have been a big part of that, haven't they? Will, who impressed you from a Fulham perspective yesterday? Or just in general, maybe in the last few weeks?
Yeah, well, I think that back two have been absolutely phenomenal, haven't they? And I sort of think it's the whole organisation that they bring, not to that back four, but the front two, the two sort of holding midfielders in front of them as well. Harrison Reed's sort of always been one player that's had this potential, especially on Football Manager, and he's sort of living up to it in a Premier League sense now. He's sort of wise above his age as well, and he's doing really well. And then even going forward, they created so many chances yesterday. It was so entertaining to watch, and they could have been 2 or 3 up at half time. Chris, I'm sure you tell me that the XG was good as well for Fulham at Anfield. And I mean, even going into it, I mean, looking back yesterday, gents, what do you think was a bigger shock? Fulham winning at Anfield or United winning at City?
I mean, we're going to move on to United next, so that's a very good segue. But before we do, let's let Jurgen Klopp have the last word on Liverpool's ambitions for the remainder of the season.
What is the priority now for you for the rest of the season?
Oh, to win football games. It's just look, we don't have to I don't have to stand here and say we fight for this or for that. We have enough to do with fighting for 3 points.
Before we jump back in on Will's point then, make sure you subscribe to the channel and you turn notifications on so you never miss an episode of Winners and Losers, live every Monday, baby. Our winners this week come from Poet Anderson, number 3. Apparently there's 3 Poet Andersons on Twitter. And he's gone for Manchester United after that victory against City at the Etihad. To put it to you in the same terms as Will then, more surprised by this victory or more surprised by Fulham, Sam?
Definitely more surprised by this victory. Like Fulham, I'm annoyed at myself because I put Robertson in my fantasy, and I put him in my fantasy just because, it's a big mistake. Just because, you know, every week you're saying, this is the week they're going to bounce back. This is the week they're going to bounce back. And they're just not bouncing back. And when the game started, I was like, yeah, this might be one of them. This might be one of them games again. But yeah, man, United did an absolute madness. Like, I haven't seen City look that fragile on the counter for time. Like, as in for months. Like, it was pretty
uncharacteristic of them, wasn't it? Like conceding in 110 seconds. I think it's been 17 years since they conceded a goal that quickly at the Etihad, which predates, this era of dominance. So, like you said, uncharacteristically fragile. But who impressed you from a United perspective then, Sam?
I think Luke Shaw was amazing that whole game. Obviously, he scored the Phil. Obviously, he scored the second goal, and I think just his all-around performance in that game and leading up to that game, I think he's been one of United's most consistent players, and it's finally time, to be fair, because he's been there for quite a few years. But in this game, he was causing Cancelo so many problems. I've never seen Cancelo look so fragile. Like the goal that leading up to his goal, that touch that he took inside, and the runs that he was making, it was just spot on from the first minute until the final minute. And he's got a bit of grittiness to him that he didn't necessarily have before this season. He's starting to do a bit of the dark arts, like kicking the ball away when the referee's blown and stuff like that, just riling up the opponents. But yeah, man, he played well. Martial, he obviously missed a sitter, but his overall game, he just seems like he was hungry again, and it's frustrating. I guess it's frustrating for United fans because they never know what Martial they're gonna get. But in this game, he seemed like he wanted it. Their midfielders were bouncing off him. There was a time when he was driving through the middle. Rodri came in to make a challenge, and he literally bounced off him. And I was like, yeah, Martial wants it this game. And obviously Bruno, they say he doesn't turn up in big games, but obviously it was a penalty. He scored a penalty again, and he's gonna say that all penalties count. But in terms of his all-round play, I think he did enough, and he contributed to his team getting the win. So yeah, man, I think a lot of their players were quite good yesterday. Yeah,
I was surprised that it was Luke Shaw's first goal of the season, especially after he told our very own Joe Tomlinson that Ollie thinks he's the best finisher at the club. But he has contributed to 6 goals now, and like you said, his kind of whole demeanour suggests, he feels like a key member of the side rather than someone continuously trying to prove themselves. And obviously confidence is an absolute drug to footballers, isn't it? And he's absolutely full of it right now. It is quite... I wasn't totally surprised by this performance because Ollie does have an incredible record at the Etihad, and they are sort of like City's kryptonite, aren't they, at home? Because City are going to be expansive, they're going to be open, and United are just willing to muddy up the game. But they didn't actually do that here. They played some decent stuff, and City looked ragged second half. A bit more assured when Kyle Walker came on. I think you're right to highlight Cancelo, Sam. A bit more assured when Kyle Walker came on. But where else do you think City fell foul in this game, William?
Well, I just think De Bruyne as well, obviously he just makes everything tick, doesn't he? And he was definitely not at the races. He just wasn't living up to sort of the high performances that we've seen over the season and seasons gone past. So I think with him in the middle not living up to expectations, and obviously they're so high with him, but he just wasn't getting it going, was he? And there was a lack of creativity. And I think United getting that penalty so early on almost sort of validated the tactics that Ollie was going to set out for that game and made them be able to implement them so much easier from an earlier standpoint as well.
What did you think to Raheem Sterling? Because obviously there's a big narrative about Wan-Bissaka having him
playing against him. Like, genuinely hates playing against him. Like, it's mad.
But to the point where now he's like trying to prove himself like a little bit too much. When there's like a pass on, he's like, I'm going to take Wan-Bissaka down the line instead. And I think 0 take on to Raheem Sterling in this game. 3 tackles for Wan-Bissaka. So once again, I think the fullback can claim victory in this tie. But that narrative continues. And I do enjoy it. I do enjoy the rivalry that's starting to formulate between those pair. City had 23 shots. United had a penalty, which was just dumb from Jesus. Sterling probably should have scored from that cross, right, Sam? So do you think United deserve a result because they executed the game plan really well? But a draw would have been fair. It's not what United fans are going to want to hear. I can almost hear that Joe Tomlinson's eyes rolling in his skull. But you know what? Maybe people got a little bit carried away with United's performance after the fact. But it makes that race for top 4 interesting now, doesn't it? They've put a little bit of daylight between themselves and Leicester and Chelsea. Anyway, let's move on swiftly to losers and get this wrapped up, gents, because I couldn't really opt for anyone else other than Celtic. And this comes from @KingRed20. I don't want to be accused of being a poor sport, so let's give Rangers some shine because they stopped the 10, didn't they? winning their first title for a decade since I think Walter Smith won in 2010-11. It's their 55th in total. Give you a little bit of perspective, that's 35 more than Manchester United have won in England's top division. So, yes, fair to say that they're pretty dominant, and they've been extremely dominant this term. You know, I did say on Twitter that they've not had to do an awful lot to win it. Let me clarify. They've not done an awful lot wrong either. I mean, 28 wins, drawn 4 and only conceded 9. But this is the earliest they've secured the title. This is one of the most embarrassing title defences in Celtic history. It's been shambolic.
They've put the pressure on and you've crumbled. Let's have it right.
Yeah, mate. I mean, I watched the Dundee United game yesterday. I watched all the games, but it was just indicative of a squad who were just feeling the pressure and just sick of it, sick and tired of it. They could, you know, legacy plans not good enough. It's a squad that's effectively been in transition all season and it's just lacked real direction. But I'm going to do a big video on my channel. I can't be bothered to bore you guys with it now. But I wanted to ask you, Steven Gerrard,
legend.
Where do you think would be a good next step for him, or would, if you were Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp leaves the club in a year, 2 years time, would you just go ahead and give him the job straight off the bat? Sam, starting with you.
I think Gerrard needs to be very, very careful with his next move, because he's literally made history with Rangers now, and I think he needs to now go through the motions of, okay, he's won a league now. Celtic are definitely going to bounce back. So when they bounce back, how can he respond to that? And how can he, let's say the next few years, how can he face the Celtic that come at him, and maybe just solidify himself more in management rather than making that big bold step to go in Liverpool? Because I do think Klopp is going to leave sooner than we think.
I think he said 2024, right?
I think
that's his plan. I think that's his exit plan.
I even think I don't know, but I think he might leave sooner. If he does go to 2024, then that's enough time for Gerrard to just stick it out at Rangers, learn your craft, man. I think a lot of these new managers, they see the opportunity, and I'm not talking about Lamps, because that's a different. I'm not talking about Lamps, because Arteta did the exact same thing, like jumping at the opportunity, obviously because it's there, and then going through the motions of being at a top club in the Premier League, one of the hardest league in the world, and then seeing the challenges that you're facing like week in, week out. It's hard. So I think it's better for Gerrard to go through the motions at Rangers, stay there for a few years, and then if Liverpool come calling, like, weigh up his options. And if it's good timing, if they're in a good position in there, if they're in a good place, not like Arteta when he went to Arsenal and he has a madness to do. I think he has to go to Liverpool when they're in a good position. And yeah, man, I think that's definitely going to be his next step.
I like that you started that conversation clearly with Lampard in mind.
It wasn't,
and then you made it about Arteta.
It is more about managers just going into roles prematurely. Like
I agree.
It happens, isn't it?
It's a very sensible standpoint. Like, obviously Frank Lampard has been linked with the Celtic job, but that is purely because people want to see Lampard versus Gerrard in an Old Firm game, not because it makes sense. But the ball is in Celtic's court here, because they have got to employ a new manager, and you know, it's weird. There's a weird sense around the club in terms of it's unpredictable what direction they're going to take. There's a lot of seasoned veterans out there, Spalletti, Valverde, you know, that are potentially worth going after, despite the fact they would command high wages, or they might go in the sort of youthful ex-player with a sporting director vibe in the form of Sean Maloney. I honestly don't know what they're going to do. It's a very unpredictable club right now. Will, if you were, if you were Steven Gerrard and comparable playing styles, what would you do, mate?
If you're Steven Gerrard, Chris, and Liverpool come calling next season or the season after, how can you turn that down? I mean, I think I definitely agree with both of you. I think managers, especially the younger managers these days, tactically and on the pitch and coaching wise, they're absolutely fantastic. But I think with Frank Lampard, sorry Sam, it was just sort of when you get into that slump, it's dealing with it and dealing with the dressing room and dealing with egos. And you go from Derby to Chelsea. I mean, when people are on 300 grand a week, it's a bit different to dealing with people down in the Championship. So I think it's just trying to get those life experiences under your belt, and maybe you can do that with Rangers if they get back into the Champions League, which they are going to do, and start to attract bigger names. It might just be the the perfect breeding ground for him, and who knows, it might be the perfect fit, but I just can't see him turning it down.
The Old Firm are becoming like, and people will take umbrage with the fact I've said Old Firm because it's a new Rangers. Get over it, to be perfectly honest. They are becoming the perfect breeding ground for both Premier League players and managers now. I'm not sure how I feel about my club, just becoming a feeder club for the Premier League. I don't know whether they should embrace it or not. Right. Anyway, Sam, Chelsea tonight. I wanted to get your thoughts on Chelsea versus Everton. Just, give us a quick breakdown. Are you apprehensive or confident or what?
I'm confident. I'm confident going into the game. I feel like people are underestimating how good of a job Tuchel's done. Like, we've conceded 2 goals, I think, in 9 games, and one of them was an own goal. Like, defensively, we've been solid. It's only going forward that I'm a bit wary, just because it's just not clicking as much as I want it to in the final third. And I think the players and the manager, they're all aware of that as well. So I'm hoping that in the next few weeks, in the next few games, that we have that one game where everything just clicks. Werner gets 2, Mount scores a mad goal. Like, you get what I'm saying? I'm hoping we that happens in the Everton game, innit? So I'm going for a 3-1 or a 2-1. Because I think Richarlison's gonna bang him because he's just hot on.
I know you're a bit of a fan of Richarlison, aren't you?
Yeah.
I've been really impressed with the way Tuchel's brought it together, and it's the sign of a great coach that, like, he's thrown his preferred system out. I know he likes playing with high fullbacks, and he kind of implemented that straight away. But he's gone with a system that suits the talent he has at his disposal. And like, when you see players on the periphery make big strides in such a short space of time, I think that's the hallmark of a great coach. Like the performance Christensen put in against Manchester United, and the lines between your defenders, Aspilicueta, Rudiger, Christensen, 2 of them weren't in the team 3 or 4 months ago, and they look like such a solid collective unit. Yes, like you're hoping the finishing will come a little bit later. And I do think you passed up some very good opportunities in the meantime. Obviously, Timo Werner a little bit unlucky to have that goal ruled out offside as well. Not what we want to see in the Premier League, but yeah, I think I think the Chelsea board have been vindicated fairly quickly, all emotion aside. Right, let's move on to the moment of the week. And I did want to give you the floor this week, Will. Stuart Kirk sent in, surely moment of the week has got to be Will Brazier for tracking down Nikola Zigic for moment of the weekend. So can you take us through your video that is live now on your channel? There will be a link to it in the description below, because it's quite a heartwarming narrative, mate.
Yeah, just to put it out there, I do not know Stuart Kirk. He's not a relative of mine, so thank you, Stuart. But yeah, no, just back on the YouTube hype. So Chris said he'll put the link down in the description. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, just wanted to find Nikola Zigic 10 years ago. Won £700, which is probably the most amount of money I've ever won on a bet. We won the Carling Cup, and no one's seen the big man since, really. He left Birmingham and sort of moved to Valencia. Doesn't do interviews, doesn't have social media, but managed to get 15 minutes with the big man that I'll never forget. What
an outstanding way to end this show. Right, Sam, is there anything to plug across Football Daily or Football Daily? Have I missed anything out before we depart?
Snapchat. If you're on Snapchat, go check that out. Go and subscribe to the Football Daily and the Transfer Talk, because we're on there daily, and some of the stories are very, very interesting, and we don't normally cover them on YouTube. So yeah, go check that out. And
apparently we're in the top 1% for average view duration on Snapchat.
Go on, lads.
So, come on, the boys. Right, that's it. Like, subscribe, make sure you're in the comments for the first hour, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Peace.